This podcast is not affiliated with any Grand Lodge, and the ridiculous antics and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own. Should be dismissed immediately.
Good evening and welcome to episode 42 of Studio 357 Masonic Podcast. I'm your host, Joe.
Producer Heath.
And co-host Jim.
And we are joined tonight by a fantastic Masonic author. He's written three Masonic books. This is Mr. Brother Dan Hrinko out of Ohio. Everybody clap and wave.
And we're actually really, I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag. He can say what his day job is, but we really need one on this show. So we'll get into that here in a minute. But
yeah,
we're excited for that as well.
Real quick, as we always start out with our show sponsors, we have Homeward Handyman Services, bricksmasons.com, the Insurance Center, the Corporal Dagan Page Foundation, masongearshop.com, and of course our Patreon supporters. Which we were, due to some of our Patreon proceeds, we were able to sponsor a booth at a Masonic car show that we will do. I guess when this airs, it'll be yesterday, so won't really matter then. You'll get what we're saying. So what have we been up to the last couple of weeks?
Well, I'm starting a new job in a week.
Is it that soon already?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've been getting all that handled and getting out of my job handled and out of the military handled. It's been fun.
Good times.
Yeah.
We've been trying to sell our house, which hasn't been going very well. The market is kind of garbage right now. We did do a fellowcraft degree, a double fellowcraft degree at the Nebraska Masonic home. Mm-hmm. And they happen to have a set of pillars and a staircase consisting of 3, 5, and 7 steps on the outside of their building. I don't know how that happened at the Masonic home, but we took advantage of it. What about you, Jim?
If it was planned. We finished the third of our 3 weddings that were back to back to back, and 2 of those were traveling 3.5 hours away. So
you got married 3 times?
Well, it felt like it. It was a long road trip, but that was a lot of fun. It was great to be around family and friends. Masonically, we're getting ready. We're going to have at Nebraska 1, we're going to have a Master Mason on Monday, which would probably be the day this is going to come out. And so I've been practicing and learning the first craftsman. So I think I've got it. We'll find out on Monday.
So if you're listening to this on the way to work on Monday morning, get a hold of Nebraska Lodge 1.
$20. We have a steak dinner beforehand. Traditionally, we do it at halftime, but this time we're going to try it beforehand. It makes the night a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
But yeah, just RSVP. Let us know that you're coming, and we'll throw a steak on for you.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Mr. Hrinko, what have you been up to the last couple of weeks?
Well, besides taking care of the demands of my day job, Arts and Sciences Lodge in Hilliard, Ohio had a stated meeting within the past couple of weeks. And of course, at Arts and Sciences Lodge, we have a discussion at every single meeting because that is our primary form of education. And what we discussed was the concept of logic. We had an educational presentation on the difference between deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, and adductive reasoning, and how those concepts differ based upon the original Greek philosophies. And then we began to extrapolate as to why is logic considered such an important element of our Masonic trivium. And lasted about 45 minutes, which is typical for us. The other Masonic event I had was we had a quarterly meeting of our ordinance, which is our officer preparation program that we have baked into the educational system at Arts and Sciences Lodge. But I'll get in more into that when we start talking about my latest book.
Perfect. Well, that's awesome. I can tell already I'm going to have to take a break and get some Nariva going to get my brain moving as fast.
Well, before we dig into the books, Dr. Dan, well, I do know I've read both of the books in the last 2 weeks. I did not get through the appendices because there's a lot there and I want to spend some deep time diving into that. But I absolutely loved both of them. I really, really like the Craft Driven Lodge. So I know you're going to talk about From Man to Mason, but I would like you to touch on that one too, because that's great. But now my question was, I know in the latest book, you talked about how your lodge does not use titles. And so how would you like us to call you tonight?
Well, when I got my apron, I was told that I was now a brother and that no greater honor could be conferred upon me at any point in time. So even though I've temporarily held jobs with nice titles and initials and all that, the one that sticks with you the rest of your life and the highest is that of brother. And that is what I prefer.
Perfect.
I like it.
You want to start off?
Yeah. So tell us where you're from, what lodge you belong to, and something interesting about you.
Well, I've been a Mason 48 years. I was initiated, passed, and raised in Clark Lodge in Springfield, Ohio, which is kind of the western part of the state. And that was my father's lodge. It was a family tradition sort of thing. And when I joined at the ripe old age of 21, because that was the minimum age in Ohio at the time, I joined because I knew there was something special there. My initial Masonic experiences back in 1977 were in many ways amazing and stimulating, and in other ways completely lacking. When I started asking questions about what's this word mean or why is this important, what I got was simplistic answers of like, I don't know. That's what the ritual says. And so I left there enthralled with the idea of what Freemasonry had to offer, but little in the way of Masonic stimulation for the deeper philosophical side of things. So that led to me going through the line, becoming Master of the Lodge in 1983. And they said I was a great master because I was letter perfect with my ritual. And I said, that's great, but I still don't know what this stuff really means. Got involved with raising kids. And then about 20 years later, I got re-engaged with the lodge on an active level, became master again in 2005. Well, in 2007, I'd still had none of these questions answered, although I did run into a group called the Philalethes Society, which still exists. It's a Masonic research society that publishes scholarly articles. Now, at that point in time, they had an incredibly active listserv where you swapped emails around. And on that listserv were some of the greatest Masonic minds of the past 50 years. And I suddenly began to realize that there was a lot I could learn, read, and study that would help me explore the philosophical, deeper meanings of Freemasonry. And those brothers really turned me on to something powerful. In 2007, I heard about a group of guys in Columbus, Ohio, which is about 45 minutes away, who, like me, were frustrated. They had no knowledge, and they decided to form a dinner discussion group that we called the Goose and Gridiron. And we would get together on a monthly basis, and we would have dinner, and we would talk about Freemasonry, share what we've learned, share what we led, and it was incredibly stimulating and amazing. And our discussions evolved from Masonic philosophy and just sharing information into questions like, what could we do to make our ritual more impactful? So we're not allowed to change the words. That's that innovation stuff that we all promise not to do. But you can change how you say the words and how you illustrate things to really up the ante when it comes to making an impact on this person. And then we also began discussing what kind of education should a man get to be able to truly be a well-educated Mason. Now, like a lot of armchair quarterbacks, it's easy to sit back and say, wouldn't it be great if? But you don't know until you put the things to the test. So we decided to form a lodge. And that is the origins of Arts and Sciences Lodge number 792 in Hilliard, Ohio, which I call a best practices lodge. We're not traditional observance because there's some rigidity and some superficiality to that I really don't like. We're not, part of the observance in a lot of ways, because again, there's a lot of rigidity there. What we did was we surveyed all the practices of Freemasonry that we knew of, and we selected those practices that best fit us. In other words, we custom built a lodge to meet our needs. I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to be selected to be the charter master. So it was my job to take all these ideas we've been discussing in theory and organize these guys who were all knowledgeable, talented Masons, kind of like herding cats, into a lodge that actually worked. We got our dispensation in 2009. We earned our charter in 2010. And at that point, we had 24 members. In the intervening years, we are up to 44 members, growing with about a 70% activity retention rate. Which, now think about that. How many of you guys can talk about your lodge raising 10 guys, and after 2 years, 7 or 8 of them are still active in lodge?
That's really impressive.
It's unheard of.
Okay. So we knew we were on to something. We kept getting a lot of requests like, will you come tell us what you do? These meetings are amazing. And so that was the origin of the first book, Craft Driven Lodge. And it was basically but I not only talk about what we did, which is the second section, okay? Because we figured it's real easy to come up with a list of 35 things to do to make yourself into a cool Masonic lodge. But if you just do those things without understanding why they're important and making sure that they fit you and your style, then it may not be as effective. It's kind of like putting on somebody else's suit. Just because that suit looks good on one guy doesn't mean it's going to look good on you. You need to have it custom tailored. So the first part of the book is my attempt at being able to say, here are the principles that we used to form and operate the lodge. And they're conceptual ideas that if you understand and embrace, it empowers you and your brothers to sit down and have those tough conversations to make your lodge just the way you want it, with your goals, your vision, your talent pools, and your success. And we can get into those 4 principles a little later on if you want.
The one thing before you carry on, before you go any further, I do want to point out that it's not just for starting a new lodge. You go pretty in depth in an existing lodge and how we would go about with our lodge doing the same thing.
And that's exactly it. It is 4 principles that you can use to form, operate, modify, or evolve a lodge. Any lodge at any point in time can sit down with a core group of members and have those discussions about those 4 principles, and understanding and using those principles, go about modifying, evolving, or creating a lodge that's just for you. And what's nice about it is that in the 15 years that we've been in existence, our lodge has changed and evolved over time, as it should. This lodge now is a bit different than when I was master. And a lot of people would look at me and say, I tell them, if the lodge is the same in 25 years, I'll be disappointed. Because it means they're blindly following tradition without understanding the value of those traditions. And so the fact that it's evolving is good. It means that the brothers are understanding the key elements of this secret sauce that we use to build and operate our lodge. I like to say that every year at the annual meeting, we recreate the lodge. The master gives a talk on reflecting over the past year. The brothers then pass a budget authorizing payment of all bills so we don't have to read. And then we have a discussion. What do you want to see happen next year? What have we been doing that's no longer important? What might we add that might be invigorating or appropriate or interesting to the brothers, either socially, ritualistically, or involvement in our involvement with the community. And the brothers share their ideas. And then the officers who are selected then have the duty to take those goals and make them work in the next year's calendar. So some of the things that we've done in the early days have faded away. Other things have been embraced.
Yeah, absolutely great. Before we get real deep into the book, I alluded to your day job. What do you do for a profession?
I'm a psychologist with a doctorate degree from the University in Dayton, Ohio, and I specialize in forensic psychology, or psychology for the courts. So you don't have to worry if you're not in a mental institution or a jail cell. I don't care. I'm not worrying about you guys. I'm evaluating people to advise judges on what to do in these criminal matters.
Boy, we really dodged a bullet there, didn't we?
We lucked out on that one.
Wow, I was worried for a second. So I'm curious, the how-to. So the Craft Timber Lodge is basically a how-to book.
Actually, no. It is a set of principles to help you develop and follow a process so that you then check what you do. It's not strictly do this, do this, do this. It's principles that you can then read and study and understand, and then use those principles to guide your own lodge discussions. The second part is, this is what we built at Arts and Sciences Lodge using these principles. And I look at that more as kind of like an a la carte menu, but it's not a how-to in terms of a checklist of things to do. It is a process that needs to be understood to recognize the power of it. It's such an important book that the Scottish Rite Northern Jurisdiction has a list of 10 books recommended for Masonic book clubs to get lodges going on the more readings. And they've put that book on there because of the value it has at empowering brothers to discuss how their lodge operates and allow them to develop a lodge that is custom built for them.
Well, I can tell you, I don't read very much, but it is next on my list.
Yep. No, I've made sure. And again, I can't stand behind the book any more than that one. I absolutely loved it. I will definitely read it a second time and go even more in depth. I was taking notes as fast as I could, and I still wanted to make sure I got through it before we chatted. So one of my questions about arts and sciences, how you've got such great educational topics. How do you talk about how you come up with it, but who decides that? Do you have one person in charge of Masonic education, or do you take turns, or how do you do that?
Well, we have a lodge education officer who has duties, which includes monitoring the status and progress of candidates, training the master craftsmen, and organizing the topics for discussion. However, the topics for discussion come from the brothers. Remember, I mentioned that we have that discussion at every annual meeting. What do you want to have happen for the next year? This is not just events about, do we do the Strake Fry or not, or do we help support the 4th of July parade or not. It also includes, what kind of topics do you want to see here discussed in the lodge meetings? It is very much, the title, A Craft-Driven Lodge, is very intentional because it is a lodge that's driven by the will of the craft. So it's the duty of the officers to always, always, always make sure that they are seeking advice from, input from, and listening to what the brothers say they want in their Masonic experience. If you want to use a corporate parallel, the brothers on the sideline have 3 roles. Number 1 is, they are your customer. If you don't keep them happy, they're not coming back. Number 2 is, they are your workforce. If they don't support what you're doing, nothing's going to get done. And 3, they are your board of directors. They're the ones that says, this is how we want this organization to go. And it's management's job to implement all that. So it is not my year in the East. It is the year the brothers choose me to put the hand on the rudder of this ship and help clarify and keep it on course. I don't chart the destination. They do that. My only responsibility as a master that I'm obligated to follow, independent of the craft, are those fundamental requirements for the Grand Lodge, which is protecting the charter. There's a list of about 5 things you have to do to keep your charter in Ohio. And those are things that we do, whether the brother is like it or not, because you have to get them done to keep the charter. But beyond that, it's what do you guys want to see happen? What do you guys want to do? And of course, if you want to see this happen, what are you willing to do to help make it happen? So there's a lot of training and a lot of delegation. It's not the officers do everything and the brothers are spectators. That's boring.
Right.
And I imagine that builds a lot of, sweat equity. Like people are, the brothers would be more invested if they've got some stake in the game.
Well, one of the things that's the first thing that stuck out to me is a mission statement. I hadn't thought of doing a mission statement, and that got my wheels spinning right off the bat. And then it leads exactly to what you were talking about. If everybody's pointed towards that mission statement and you're all rowing in the same direction, you come together as a team. I know the corporate world's big on mission statements. I just hadn't thought of it in a Masonic sense.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Any organization that has a clear understanding of what they're trying to do, what is their purpose. There's a whole series of corporate stuff by a guy named Simon Sinek on what is your why. Okay. And we talk about our lodge meetings saying, we need to get more people here. We need to get better retention. What can we do to make this happen? And how do we go about making it happen? Well, the bottom line is, unless you understand your why, then you're just chasing your tail. You haven't clearly defined what's the point of having a lodge. In fact, we've had several discussions in Arts and Sciences Lodge about, watch this video by Simon Sinek on what is your why. He does a beautiful job. And then we take those concepts and discuss them. And then we say, how does this apply to Arts and Sciences Lodge, to our organization? What is our purpose? And we got that catchphrase, to make good men better. Well, okay. How do we do that? And why is that important? What is it we're trying to accomplish? And we spent probably 3 or 4 months of monthly meetings to develop the vision statement that I've published in all my books that we follow on Arts and Sciences Lodge. And it's got a prominent place on our webpage because that is the fundamental focus. We learn in the entered apprentice degree that we come to learn. That tells me that if you go to a lodge meeting and you don't leave having learned something, either you weren't paying attention or your lodge is failing you. Right. It's the lodge's job to teach Freemasonry. We're not a charity. We can be charitable, but that's not our main job. There are lots of charities out there that are way better than us. Okay? We're not a social club. There are lots of places that are way better than us at being a social club, So what is it that we have that nobody else has that should be the focus of everything we do? Learning Freemasonry. That is our core purpose. And when we agreed that that was what we were looking for, that became that point on the horizon that drives us, that everything else is guided by ending up there.
In both of the books, you talked about forming this new lodge and how you had to go around and talk to other lodges that it wasn't a threat. We're not stealing members. For my curiosity, how has that played out? Do you have a lot of plural members? Do you have a lot of people that moved over to the lodge? How did that end up playing out?
When we first started, obviously we had 24 members who were all members of other lodges. We made a commitment that for 5 years, if you were in a position of responsibility in your home lodge, that you fulfill whatever responsibilities would naturally flow from that. So if you were junior warden of your home lodge, you are expected not to leave your home lodge hanging, but to fulfill your duty as hopefully senior warden, hopefully master, before you decided to reduce your involvement. Over the past 15 years, we're at the point now where about 2/3 of our members are Sons of Arts and Sciences.
We lost.
Oh, we just lost. Oh, we lost audio.
Yep. You happen to mute?
1 second here. Let's take a quick break and see what we can figure out here.
Yeah, we can't hear you at all. So we'll
How's that going now?
There we go.
There we go.
now we're back.
I changed microphones. Why it stopped on my blue snowball, I don't know. Okay. So 2/3 of our members are Sons of Arts and Science. These are men who were seeking Freemasonry and went through the process that I've outlined in my third book, which is From Man to Mason. And that is the closest thing to a how-to book. That is, how do you take advantage of every opportunity and every contact with a man who is interested in Freemasonry and use that to build the most educated Mason out there. And it starts with the very first contact with, I'm curious about Freemasonry, and it goes all the way through to the end of his Masonic career and then some.
And I will say, reading that book, your third, but only the second one that I read, the change of direction when you were, it was really a little bit of an eye-opening experience for me, a little bit gut-wrenching, because the thought process of we just need to get guys into the lodge, as opposed to what we need to be looking for and how we go about that, and specifically how we take care of that individual when they come into the lodge. I had to do some deep thinking on it. It changed my perspective quite a bit.
Well, we decided that we didn't want just anybody. We wanted the right guys. We wanted kindred spirits who were interested in not just a superficial experience, but something that were deep and meaningful and philosophically moving. So we created a slow introduction process whereby we don't even talk to a guy about a petition until after the third or fourth or fifth meeting, because we want to get to know them, let them get to know us, what we expect from our members, what we're willing to do to invest in them, and what we expect from them once they're through with this process. And that has done a very good job of naturally weeding out people who are not interested in philosophically deep versions of Freemasonry. They are likely to find other places. And when you talk about investing in these men, we spend about 100 hours or more in the education and training of each man who joins our lodge. 100 hours over the span of about 2 years, but you're talking, averaging one hour meeting every week for 2 years, averaging it out. Now, if you look at it, so you spend 10 hours with a guy teaching him the catechism for 3 degrees. And you do that for 10 guys. How many stick around? About 15. 1, maybe 2 out of 10 stick around. You spend 100 hours to get one guy in lodge who doesn't know all that much. Or you can spend that 100 hours investing in one well-chosen man and have a brother who knows and understands Freemasonry, is able to live it and contribute to the lodge. Which would you rather do with your 100 hours?
Right.
Right.
Well, I know I've been dominating the conversation, but I've got one more question that I've been thinking about since I read both the books. You talk about not being afraid to fail, and we've got to, as leaders, we have to be able to take those chances and not fail. As I'm reading the books, I'm reading a lot of principles and a lot of things on how arts and sciences did it the right way. What is 1 or 2 things that you did or tried that didn't work as an example of something that failed as opposed to a success?
Well, there were some attempts at creating a side group that was more social. A group of guys that wanted to get together, just kind of hang out and throw axes and do, more typical social activities. And there was about 3 guys that really wanted to make that fly. And we just basically said, okay, you want it? We have an email list that we use because everybody has their own email within our own private email system. And so we use that for our primary means of communication. This is fine. Pick a day at a time, go set it out, run with this ball and see what happens. And it went on for about 4 months and it just kind of fizzled. It was an idea that didn't really play out. The nice thing about our principles is that the principles are universal and you use them to try out new ideas. It's a process for making decisions. It is a process for determining what the lodge will and won't do. The process has never let us down. The only time it's let us down is when we failed to use the process.
Right.
We had in our Guild of the Wardens this last meeting, we were talking about how it's, which is more difficult, identifying someone in the lodge with the skill, working with them to help them see how that skill benefits the lodge, creating an opportunity for them to do that skill to the benefit of the lodge, and then letting the lodge benefit from it. Is that easier or more work than just doing it yourself? Okay. But you think about the long-term implications of just doing it yourself. You've missed all those opportunities to build a relationship with that brother through your contacts and getting to know each other's strengths and weaknesses and all that. You've robbed him of the opportunity of engaging with the lodge and enjoying the satisfaction of being a part of that lodge. And so it's more work on your part as a leader to delegate and train than it is to just do it yourself. But if you just do it yourself, you've robbed that brother of that involvement, and you're sending a message to the whole lodge. When you're an officer, you do it all. And if you're not an officer, you do nothing.
So I'm going to take us back a little bit, back to when you first start talking to these candidates, when they approach you and say we're interested in masonry. Do you find that these gentlemen are deeply philosophical right from the start, like that's what they're into, or do some of them just kind of come around to that way of thinking?
It's kind of a mixture of both, because our typical thing is if someone says, hey, I'm interested in Freemasonry, that it's a telephone conversation. What do you know about Freemasonry? What have you read? What books have you read? Because a lot of guys have already read Dummies or Idiot's Guide or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they've gotten a pretty solid understanding, depending upon the book they read, about Freemasonry. And then we talk about, so what do you think Freemasonry has to offer you? What are you looking? What do you think might happen if you get involved? And then it's like, okay, well, if that conversation shows promise, then it's like, well, tell you what, we have dinner before lodge every meeting at the local tavern. So come join us at the tavern at 5:30, meet some of the guys. And if they show up, then it's like, hey, we're not talking to each other, because we all know that this is an important part of the life of the lodge. If you're talking with Brother Jones about something that, what's his kids doing in soccer or lacrosse or things like that, and a new inquirer comes in, we drop everything, introduce ourselves, and help them find a table. And the brothers at that table know that there's a set of topics we always cover. What do you know about Freemasonry? What are you looking for? What are you hoping to gain? And let us tell you about our lodge, a bit about our history, our expectations, our intensity, and our focus. We tell them we expect people who are willing to invest time and effort into the lodge. We expect people who are willing to ask questions and be curious. And we have that conversation with them, and we get a sense about who they are and what they're looking for, and how well does that match with the lodge. At the end of that dinner, we all pack up and go to our meeting. We tell them, hey, look, this has been interesting, come on back next month if you want. And if they show up, then we sit them at a different table with a different group of guys for the same basic conversation. Okay? So
I
now
like it.
they've had dinner with 4 guys the first month, a different 4 guys the second month, and they come back a third month and they have dinner again with a different set of 4 guys. Maybe they've read some things. We encourage them to look at our website to learn more about who we are. When at the third meeting, we're talking more about, well, here's the financial side. Our dues are $200 a year. Why are they $200 a year? Because that's what it costs to run the lodge. We don't have an endowment fund or, generous sugar daddies from the 40s and 50s that left up a pile of money. We pay our own way. We've also made a commitment that anything we do is charitable never comes out of dues. Charity is always based on our sweat. We'll do an event to raise money for a charitable purpose.
I like it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if after those 3 meetings, they like what they're getting into, we like what we're seeing, then we say, okay, here's the process. If you're interested, you can ask for a petition. Your job then is to find 2 guys in this room who are members of this lodge who are willing to sign for you. Okay. And when that happens, we'll do the investigating committee and so on and so forth. Okay. And then we see what happens.
I like it.
Yeah, me too.
It's a good format. Let's take a quick break, and we'll do some rest and refreshment for about 30 seconds or a minute or so, and then we'll come right back.
Yeah.
Your one-stop Masonic marketplace. You are the hero of this journey. We want to proudly stand behind you every step of the way. We want to enable you to go the extra mile in your Masonic travels. We want you to look your very best on every occasion. Investing in high-quality regalia shouldn't be a burden. We know you want to be better. We know you want to make a difference. We don't think you should compromise. Be your best. Visit bricksmasons.com today. Demonstrate that love never ends through the commitment to support past and present service members, the communities that surround them, and the loved ones of those whom we will never forget. Visit deganpage.org for more information. At Homeward Handyman Services, we pride ourselves on being honest and giving every job the attention it deserves. Owned and operated by a master mason with 2 decades of expertise in home repair. We are bonded and insured, and we carry the highest standards when it comes to taking care of your home. Whether you need a faucet changed or a light remodel, we can take care of your home improvement needs. Call Michael at 402-915-0824 today for a free estimate.
When it comes to something as important as insurance, it's imperative that you work with an agency who has an in-depth knowledge of multiple insurance products, companies, and guidelines, not just one. We are completely independent agents, and we work for your best interests. We are Mason-friendly. We have locations in Fremont and Elkhorn. We provide policies for virtually all of your personal and commercial needs, including health and dental. Visit our website at www.theinsurancecenterinc.com. We're available Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we're back. Wasn't that fast?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we never left.
Well, some of us didn't.
Some of us did.
Some of us did.
All right, Dan, let's concentrate mostly on your latest book now from Amanda Mason, which we've started to cover a little bit, but let's continue down that road.
Sure. Well, I already talked about what we do before they actually get a petition. The petition process is pretty standard. You get 2 people recommending, a committee, 3 of them investigates, and then those investigating committees they usually meet at the person's home when we make sure that their family members are aware of their involvement in Freemasonry and don't have any major objections. And we answer their questions as best we can. Because, see, one of the things we do at Arts and Sciences Lodge is that we have numerous family activities throughout the year. Now, people say, well, that's nice. Why do you do that? Well, we don't do it just because it's nice. We do it for a very specific reason. You have to remember, all of us took an obligation to support brothers or widows and orphans, their family. So, heaven forbid I get hit by a bus or end up in a hospital. If my brothers show up on my front door, I don't want my wife saying, "Who are you?" I want her to say, "What took you so long?" Which means he has to know them. They have to know her through social events on many occasions before we ever get to that crisis moment where, hey, I'm supposed to support somebody's widow and I've never met her. So we do a family picnic. We do family dinners. We even have an open discussion where we invite the family members and prospective members and guests into the lodge room for one of our philosophical discussions. So they get a sense as to what we do in lodge, minus the ritual work. And so the idea is, if my wife knows who I hang out with and what I'm doing, she's less worried if I'm not getting home until 1 a.m. And that's because we finished our meeting at 10. We went across the street to a tavern. We continued our philosophical discussion until 12:30 before we actually had a chance to break up this wonderful philosophical exchange of ideas. So she knows where I'm at, what I'm doing, who I'm hanging out with, and hopefully she sees the benefits of my involvement in the way I run my life as a husband, father, etc. So they get through the process, they go to the ballot box. If they pass the ballot box like any other jurisdiction, then we get them involved in more education, more formal education. Between the passing of the ballot box and the initiation as the apprentice, we have a 3-session school we call the School of the Profane. Profane meaning outside the temple, not profane as in, dirty words kind of thing. And what this School of the Profane does is, I equate it to like tilling the soil before you plant the garden, okay? The first session focuses on the concept of symbolism. What are symbols? How do they show up in everyday life? And we talk about things like a stop sign. That's a symbol. It's a complicated concept that's important to know, and that one simple red octagon communicates a ton of information through a very simple form. We talk about religious symbols and how those communicate ideas within their faith. Okay? And then we lay out the working tools of a stonemason that we are also familiar with in lodge. And we ask them to speculate on what lessons could be attached to these tools. And they think about it and they come up with their own thoughts. We don't tell them if they're right or wrong. We just get their brain going. So they understand that symbols are a powerful way to teach complicated abstract concepts. We then have them read the Book of Kings, not for evangelical purposes, but for historical background, because that is the backdrop upon which Freemasonry lays all of its symbols and allegories and experiences. Mm-hmm. So we want them to be familiar with what all happened and all that. Okay? And then we give them, that's the second session. And then the third session is we give them Plato's allegory of the cave. And then we discuss that with them during the third session, and how allegories or fables are all used to teach lessons, regardless of historical accuracy. And again, so we're getting their brain moving in the direction to be attentive to the way Freemasonry teaches. because we teach through experience. We teach through familiarity. We teach through symbols. We teach through allegories and fables. And so we're tilling the soil, getting it ready. So when those seeds of Freemasonry are planted, they're in a fertile soil ready to go.
And it also allows it through the ceremonies, as you talked about, it allows a little bit of that emotion that it becomes even more, the emotion stronger with a little bit more background. It's drinking out of the fire hose is not nearly as bad if you've got that foundation.
Well, the ritual ceremony is primarily and should primarily be an emotional experience. You shouldn't walk out of there with an encyclopedic knowledge of Freemasonry. If you do, you've completely missed the point. It should be emotional, powerful, moving. And so we also give them a sealed envelope at that third session. And it has an essay by Carl Claudy called Preparation. And we tell them that on the day of your initiation, if you can at all possibly do it, take the day or at least the afternoon off work. Take a nice warm shower, sit down, relax, okay? Listen to some of your favorite music that'll keep your mind, clear your head of the world around you. And then read this letter. Open this envelope and read this essay by Carl Claudy called Preparation. Before you come to the dinner. At the dinner, you are the star of the show. We're here to celebrate you. We do a lot of toasting at dinners. You know, here's to our visitors. Here's to our candidates. You know, here's to the successes of whatever. We sing together. We sing a Masonic grace. We also sing before the opening and closing of every lodge meeting with an opening ode and a closing ode that we've put together based upon familiar tunes. Our Masonic grace is done to Auld Lang Syne. Everybody knows that tune. We just put in different words. Our opening ode and closing ode are all done to My Country 'Tis of Thee, or if you're British and Canadian, God Save the King. Okay? But we've put our own words to it that are Masonically related. By singing together, and it's not how good we are at singing, it's the fact that we're willing to contribute to this group effort of raising our voices. And even if we're off key, that's okay, because there's no embarrassment. There's no grading. It's just a group activity that brings us together. Nice. We set the candidate in the preparation room with a simple candle, no lights, for at least 35, 40 minutes. And we tell them to clear their mind and to focus on being receptive to the mysteries that are likely to be revealed to them. Now, we don't have a formal chamber of reflection. When we first started our lodge, we were specifically told by the Grand Master who signed our charter and dispensation, do not do a charter of reflection, because that was considered too out of the ordinary for most of the Masonic establishment here in Ohio. Since then, the Grand Lodge has published guidelines for developing and establishing and holding a chamber of reflection. And this year's incoming Deputy Grand Master, if elected, has already said that if you want to win the Grand Master's Award for a lodge, you must create and use a dedicated chamber of reflection. So, you know, the rest of the world's catching up with us.
The unchanging ritual, right?
Well, you know, I tell people the ritual doesn't change. The way we present it and the way we practice Freemasonry has to change if we're going to remain relevant, you know?
That is true.
So he goes through his entered apprentice degree. We typically do our ritual by candlelight as opposed to, you know, normal lights. You know, when the ritual says the lights are raised, it's only a very subtle difference, because there's nothing worse than having that particular moment being blinded to where it hurts. We focus our light on the altar so that the brightest thing in your vision is the altar, and everything else fades into darkness. If you've got a copy of Craft Driven Lodge, the front cover picture of Craft Driven Lodge is what people see at Arts and Sciences Lodge when they first get a chance to see the lodge room. It is a line of brothers heading off into the darkness. And the altar is the most central focus and most brightest thing in your field of vision. So we do things like that to make our ritual more meaningful. We practice our ritual to perfection with emotion, with pauses, with reflection, and we present it in a way that is not just accurate, but it's powerful and gripping. And we pride ourselves on that because we are there to create an experience for that brother. So it's usually considered an amazing evening, and I'm jealous that these guys are getting the kind of experience I wish I had, but you can never go back and do it over.
That's true. That's true.
Now the real difference starts after that meeting. This brother is likely to be an entered apprentice for anywhere from 4 to 7 months. Months, not weeks, months. And what we do is we meet with that brother every single week. We appoint 2 master craftsmen to work with him. One's a senior master craftsman who's done this before, and another is a relatively new brother who's looking for a job to do in the lodge, because everybody in the lodge has a job. That's principle number 3 from Craft Driven Lodge. Everybody has a job. If you have a job, you're engaged, you go to lodge and you contribute. If you don't have a job, you stay home and watch Survivor, you know, which is, in my opinion, a huge waste of time, but that's my editorializing.
Well, you're not by yourself.
So during those weekly meetings, the first one, and they're outlined in Man to Mason very, very clearly. The first meeting is, let's talk about your experience. What do you remember? What happened? What questions do you have? And how can we explain it? Okay. And then we start into our proficiency process. Now, everybody knows about the catechisms. You know, that is the backbone of proficiencies. Well, we don't look at it that way. We teach the brother the catechism. We expect him to memorize it and return it in full form. But as we say, the first line says this, then we talk about that line for 20 minutes. What does that mean? And why is that line important? What's the history behind those words? And where did this come from? So over the next 8, 10, 12 weeks, we're going through the catechism line by line, teaching it, talking about it, explaining it. We're going through the ritual line by line, and the lecture and the charge, talking about it, teaching it, explaining it, answering questions. We also give them things to read, like Carl Claudy's Introduction to Freemasonry for Entered Apprentices. We give them the Grand Lodge of Ohio's Basic Education course for entered apprentices. We also give them what Ohio has developed is called a Principles Proficiency. This is for guys that have memory problems and just can't do the catechism. So what it is, it's about an 8 to 10 hour study course where you read, you discuss questions and elements of each degree, and then you go back to lodge and you discuss your answers in your own words to a list of questions to show that you understand and can apply these principles within the degree. In many ways, it's better than just regurgitating a catechism, because we've all seen guys who can learn them and spit them out and really have no idea what they're talking about.
Right.
And people says, oh, you're proficient. I disagree. So we expect the brothers to spend some serious time studying that degree. We've had entered apprentices give the entered apprentice charge at the next entered apprentice exemplification. Because they're studying the degree, they have a proficiency from memory, and say, hey, we got a guy coming up. You want to get involved in the ritual? Here's the charge. It's in plain English. We'll help you learn it. And off you go. So we're getting them involved in that ritual work if they're talented in that way from the very beginning. We also have them go see the entered apprentice degree at other lodges and then talking about what they saw. We have them get together in discussion groups that we call a lodge of instruction, which is run by the junior warden for entered apprentices. They get together on a monthly basis with all the entered apprentices and all the master craftsmen, and they talk about the entered apprentice degree, focusing on those elements in the books and the printed material, etc. So this guy is getting a lot of attention over that 4 to 7 months that they are an entered apprentice. And when they finally reached a point where they've been through everything and have a really good grasp on things, in recent years with the political climate, the way things have gone, we don't openly talk about politics, but one entered apprentice asked me in a training session and says, how did the founding fathers get away with this line that's in the charge in Ohio about being a peaceful citizen within your country? How did you do that? And so
great topic.
So we spent some time talking about the fact that if what Jefferson wrote is that government and men have a social contract. And as long as both parties upheld that contract, it's a working system. But when the one party violates that contract, which is what the Declaration of Independence said King George did, then you are no longer considered a legal or legitimate authority.
Right.
And so these are the discussions we have with our entered apprentices. That's the depth that we go to.
So that really is that's great information. I don't want you to give away the whole book. So where I got it through McCoy Publishing, is that the one place you can get it? Is there other places you can get it? Where can other people get your book?
McCoy Publishers is the best place to get it. When you buy direct from my publisher, everybody gets the biggest cut possible. You get the best price, and it all works out. When you start involving third parties, they take a cut out of everybody's share, and that's not necessarily treating Brother Steve McCall, who runs McCoy Publishing, or Brother Dan Hrinko to the best of your ability.
Yep. Perfect. And remind everybody what the website is for that. It's been a while since I purchased them.
It's probably on the back of the books there, but it's www.mccoy.com. MACOY. It's not MCCOY. It's MACOY. And that is the website. You do search in the books and all that, and you'll find both books there. You'll also find my third book, which is The Purple of the Fraternity, which is Servant Leadership Cast in Masonic Terms. You had mentioned the qualities of a leader. Well, that is, if you go to Craft Driven Lodge, there's a small subsection on the third or the fourth principle about leaders let the workers work, about the role of Grand Lodge. I had one guy read that section and call me up, and he says, "How can you say that about Grand Lodges?" I said, "Brother, you should have seen what I edited out." Yeah, I personally feel that Grand Lodges get too intrusive, too involved, and too micromanaging over lodges. But that's just my take.
Yeah, and that's also in the book. If you wanted to dive deeper into that, yeah, I thought you did an incredible job of talking about Grand Lodge. One of the things that I had to change my perspective on. I have not yet been in the East. And I will refuse to call it my year in the East now after reading your book. So those are the kind of things. But as I was thinking about that, I had not thought about all the interactions with Grand Lodge and that little obstacle course. But I think what Joe's setting up for, we like to do a little thing here where we ask some questions to you. They're rapid fire questions. I'll kind of let Joe do that, but we want to learn more about you specifically.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So we have questions numbered from 1 to 33. It just happened that way. But we're going to hit question 12.
What do you enjoy the most? Blue Lodge, Scottish Rite, York Rite, Shrine, or etc.?
Blue Lodge, hands down. Blue Lodge is the root of all Freemasonry, and investing in your Blue Lodge, you're doing the craft a disservice.
All right. Next one is 15.
Which of all the degrees is your favorite?
Entered apprentice. That's the degree that makes me a Mason.
Mm.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
18. Yep. What is the funniest thing you have seen happen in a lodge?
Oh my goodness. There is occasionally some embarrassing wardrobe malfunctions with some of the candidate clothing because of poor fitting, which is why we tell the guys, go to your local department store, buy a pair of pajamas that fit you and bring them with you so we avoid all that.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like
like that.
$20 at Walmart, you know.
That's a great idea.
It is.
Mhm.
One more.
How could lodges or masonry in general reach untapped audiences?
By being good masons outside of the lodge and making that connection between what you're doing that the world notices and your Masonic experiences. When I was a district deputy, lodges would say, hey, we're going to be doing this. We're going to be doing a fundraiser. We're going to be doing a charitable event and all that. And I says, you need to do yourself a favor. It's not just XYZ Masonic Lodge hosting a dinner to raise money for cancer research. It's because we're Masons and we care about the world around us, we are having this dinner to raise money for cancer research. So you let your Masonic values show in a clear way so that people say, wow, those guys are Masons and this is what they believe. And that's what's underneath all these actions that we see in the community.
Wow.
That's a great answer. I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like our good friend of the show. I'm sure you're familiar with Brother Jim Hall. He he likes to say be loud about masonry.
Mm.
You know, not just the I'm a Mason. It's the why we're Masons. What we do as Masons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dan, we've reached the spot on our show where we do shout outs. So I don't have one yet.
Well, I'll start.
think of one. Okay.
I'll start off. So this last week we had Scottish Rite meeting. They did a capping ceremony. So for those of you that are friends of the show, you know that the three of us were in the fall class. There was a spring class, the Scottish Rite. They got their caps on Monday. And I'm going to give a shout out not only to the class, but to their orator. If you remember, I got to be the class orator, give a speech. Don Dotson was the orator this time around. Did a great job. One of the things they do as an orator, they don't tell you what to talk about. So you have to come up with your own subject. Did a great job, but he gave a shout out. The class had discussed it. Their favorite degree was the 5th degree. And that's special to the three of us because we were the ones that presented it. It hadn't been done for 28 years. But he went into depth about that degree and why it was his favorite and what it meant to the class, the lesson that they learned from it. So it was memorable enough that he could say what the degree was about, which a lot of the degrees when you walk out the first time, water from the fire hose, you don't know. But again, it was a shout out to the 5th degree, and a couple of us were there from our class, and we were asked multiple times if we were doing it again. So, but the shout out, all the props to Don and the speech that he gave.
Wow, I'm blushing a little bit. You guys did a great job with that.
And we had a great director.
You have a shout out, kiddo?
Yeah. I'm gonna give a shout out to all the guys in my shop, past and present, that I've been working with the last 4.5 years, and for making work tolerable.
I'm gonna give a shout out to my boss because the big tournament of the year is happening right now at the golf course, and I don't have to go into work tomorrow. So that's fantastic for me. So, what about your shout out?
I guess my shout out is going to be to that crew of Masons that in 1776 from Connecticut decided to petition John Rowe, who was a provincial Grand Master for the Grand Lodge of England in Massachusetts, for a petition to form American Union Lodge as a military lodge of the Connecticut line during the Revolutionary War, because that lodge took root in Marietta, Ohio, and I am now a past master of that lodge, and we are celebrating our 250th anniversary on February 15th of 2026. And we're having a festive board, Lodge of Entered Apprentices and banquet on that Sunday afternoon for Masons only. And tickets are available now for your reserve place for this momentous occasion of a lodge in the Midwest that is 250 years old.
Where do we get the tickets at?
You need to contact me directly and use my other email address, which would be Dan Hrinko, DANHRINKO @gmail.com. And the tickets are $75 each. And there's a service charge for using credit cards. If you want one, send me an email. I'll ask you for your choice of dinner, if it's fish, chicken, or pork. They got good pork chops, I hear. And then I'll send you a credit card invoice to pay your bill, and I'll mail you your ticket and see you in about 6 months.
Perfect.
I think Jim's going to plan a road trip.
I'm just thinking of all the guys that I know that would love to go on that road trip too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we've only got 250 tickets.
Oh.
You get a commemorative coin, a commemorative firing glass, and about a 40-page history book on American Union Lodge and military lodges as all part of that package.
I'm going to have a conversation with the wife tonight.
I might also. All right. Well, as we always end every show, Dan, it's been great having you on the show. Hopefully we've picked enough interest where everybody runs out and buys these books. You've written 3 books though, right?
That's correct.
So you want to name those so that they know what to look for?
Well, the first book is Craft Driven Lodge, and it is the one where we focus on the principles of lodge development and lodge organization. And if you go to the 4th principle, how to lead, if you take a subset of that, I expanded that into my 2nd book, which is called The Purple of the Fraternity, which is officially called A Handbook for District Deputy Grand Masters and Other Lodge Officers, but it actually applies to anybody in a leadership role. If you're a committee chairman, a program chairman, an event coordinator, anytime you're in a leadership position in Freemasonry, this works. It's servant leadership based on Masonic terms with examples of how to, and more importantly, how not to behave as a leader in Freemasonry. And then the 3rd book is the latest one, and that is From Man to Mason, A Transformation Through Education. Because your ritual experience is powerful, but when you walk out of that lodge room after your entered apprentice degree, a lot's happened, but you're not much different. It's the education about that experience that allows you to understand what's going on so that you can apply it in your life. And that's where the transformation occurs. So that's why that title is chosen. Plus, there's in the beginning of the book, there's a comment on the origins and the original essay by Brother Chad Simpson called From Profane to Master, that he wrote, 1.5 pages. And that was the root thinking that was the basis of all this education program we developed.
I can't endorse them enough. And Brother Dan, I really want to thank you for the work you've done, that putting these together. It really, you say it's not a how-to, but it comes really close. The principles, if followed, as you said, I can't wait to see some of the changes that'll be happening with people, with the lodges that follow your principles.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There are lodges around the country who are embracing these kinds of ideas. And I point out a few of them in From Man to Mason towards the back. Lexington Lodge #1 in Lexington, Kentucky is one. And there's numerous others that are forming around this idea of taking Masonry more philosophically, more spiritually, with a more rigorous education program. And lodges who are doing that are stabilizing and growing. And lodges who aren't.
Well, yeah, because there's nothing more frustrating than going through all the degrees and say, yes, I'm a master mason. What does that mean?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Which our grand custodian has said that, so many lodges just push people through, and we don't really know what just happened to you. So I think lodges need to pay a lot more attention to that process.
I was out at the Grand Lodge of Oregon as an invited speaker a little over a year ago. And they rolled out a voluntary program called the Westgate program. That sounds awful familiar. 3-4 meetings before you talk petition, get to know different guys, and all this kind of stuff. And I understand they kind of borrowed it from the Grand Lodge of New York. So there are Grand Lodges who are beginning to realize that if you do a better job caring for the new members, you're not going to have to run more guys in the front door because there's fewer of them running out the back door.
Yep. Very good philosophy. All right, Dan. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And I'm going to go drink my sorrows away because we couldn't sell our house. But at any rate, I very much appreciate you coming on the show. Buy the books, read the books, follow the books. Like, read them and take away the lessons because they're in there for sure.
All right.
So until next time,
Travel well, brother.
travel well, my brothers.
And thank you for having me. I'm revamping my Craft Driven Lodge website, and I'm going to have a whole section on there of podcast episodes that I've been part of and programs I've presented. And I'll make sure that as soon as you get this up, send me a link and I will put that on my website. So anybody that goes to my website and wants to find podcasts that I've done, they'll find yours as well.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. We appreciate that very much.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, brother.
And thank you for having me.